Captain's log, stardate 7403.6.
Are you pretending to do a captain's log?
I saw that, but I don't believe it.
A Pandronian doctor.
Shapeshifter? Boo. Look, I can set you up with somebody great on the Cerritos. There's that Philosian and Tactical. She seems like a nice plant person.
Intelligent plants?
Orion's little game of neutrality and piracy is over.
For your information, many Orions haven't been pirates for over 5 years!
Time to take this puppy off its leash! Warp me!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the...
I'm going to be you. Leave that in. Leave that in.
Fine, you'll leave that in. All right, fine. This is the Drawn to Treks podcast. Fine, we'll just start off like that. Whatever. This
Treks, plural?
Drawn
Okay,
to
great.
Treks. The multiple... I mean, there is multiple animated Star Trek, so fine. There it is. How you doing? This is me, Jesse. This is a podcast about animated Star Trek shows. I'm here as ever with my friend and wonderful human, Aaron Harvey. How you doing?
Hello. I am doing great now that we are here together.
Yes.
And I got to flip the tables on you.
Yes. Now I feel like, now I understand the pain. I'm like, God dang it.
Yes.
Well, today we are going to be talking about a new episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 2, Episode 8, I Excretus. But before we do that, I actually want to talk about my life for a little bit, because we all know my life is really what you're here for. Just because the only reason I actually want to bring it up is we were talking before we went on, I actually got to meet and interview David Gerrold from Star Trek: The Original Series. He's the writer.
From where?
He did a little episode called The Trouble with Tribbles sort of thing.
Okay.
And then also the Cloudminders, and then he did an episode of the animated series, which I'm blanking on. Two. Oh, he did the Tribbles episode of the animated series, right?
And he did BEM as well.
Oh, okay. Yes, very exactly.
Which actually kind of talks to the episode this
Exactly.
because it has a Pandronian in
Exactly, and we were also talking about before we went on. It's also interesting to talk about him in context of Lower Decks, because he wrote the Tribbles episodes, which are also comedically focused Star Trek episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But just to talk about him real quick, he was definitely someone who likes to talk.
Yes.
He does like to talk. It was actually interesting. I was moderating his panel as the guest speaker at RustyCon here in Washington. And I basically sat down next to him and I said, "Hey, I have a few questions." He's like, "Oh, okay, ask your questions." I asked one question, and he started talking for the next 20 minutes, and I just didn't get to interject. And then I finally got to ask another question, and then he went off for another 20 minutes. And then I got to ask a couple other questions. When he finally slowed down steam, I got to ask one or two more. It was just like, I guess I'm just awkwardly sitting here on stage next to him. Like everyone else, they're all here for him. No one's here for me. I'm just sort of weirdly this person just sitting next to him for 20 minutes. But he was very kind. Afterwards, you said he was very impressed with me, and he thought the questions were good, and he was just very sweet. So
yeah, there's times that if you're doing improv where somebody will you realize that the scene is okay, our characters really should exit, but there's no real graceful way to do that, so you just sort of slowly start drifting off towards the side of the stage.
Oh, I hear someone screaming for me. Bye. That sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was just I couldn't really.
That's what it can feel like on stage when you're interviewing somebody. You're just I'm the third wheel now.
Yeah. It's very. I mean, he's been going to conventions for decades now, and he's 70, 80 at this point. He's at a point where I'm sure he's just I'm just gonna talk about what I want to talk about, and I don't really care, which is fair. You know what? Once I get there, I'll be you know what? Sure, I'm just gonna talk about what I want to talk about.
That's the TNG people too. They just you want to know about this? Great, we're gonna talk about the barbecue that we had last week.
Exactly.
What Brent did when he was there, and it's
I mean, I'm here for it. I would loved everything he had to say, but it was just sort of a stream of
most of the stories that they would repeat are ones that you have already heard or can find very easily somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, mostly what I wanted to talk about him was being gay in Hollywood at that time.
Yes.
Which I thought was something he's talked a little bit about, but hasn't gotten a ton of context, especially in the context of Star Trek, other than his Blood and Fire script, which got shut down by presumably Rick Berman, at least from what we can presume. I mean, it's something I have zero doubt it was Rick Berman, but there's no actual hard confirmation of that. But
and probably other high up, ranking suits, basically.
So it was just he did talk about that, so it was all good. It was fascinating, but he was great, and so I just figured it was nice to just mention that, and it also just happens to be in good context of the episode that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and really quickly about BEM, the animated series episode, there's the Pandronians. There are these characters that can split into 3 different parts. They're called colony creatures. So why they're floating, we're not really sure, but you've got a floating head, a floating midsection, and then like little feet.
I mean, why not?
But there was it was supposed to be a live action episode for season 3 of TOS. And they had like the legs were called the walkers and the hands were called the graspers, and like they labeled all the different pieces. I'm like, okay,
That's hilarious.
And they had a specific way they were going to do it, and it would not have obviously been as easy to do it as an animation, but they had a concept. But this is also when Fred Freiberger came in to become the showrunner,
the infamous
for
season 3 Star Trek original series showrunner.
Yeah, and he did not like comedy at all. So there was also supposed to be another sequel or another Tribbles episode, which is kind of what we got in.
Yeah, that was basically the
series.
same pitch that was ended up using there.
Yeah. So he ended up using both. And BEM, this is a funny story for us as far as like the book. BEM was supposed to be in season 1, and they realized, we have one too many episodes, so we'll put that into season 2 because we didn't have any. It was already purchased, then we don't have to worry about it. But they didn't change the numbering system, so for 6 months we were looking for the secret unknown episode that was like, it's clearly there's 20, there's 16 episodes or whatever it is in the first season and not 15, and we're looking and we realized, oh wait, it's just they didn't renumber everything. They just left that extra number and just didn't use it.
That's hilarious.
I'm like, okay, great, thanks.
Well, the thing that's a funny story. The other thing you mentioned is like Fred Freiberger hating the comedy in Star Trek, which is hilarious given Lower Decks, and also the fact that like there were comedic episodes previously, like Troubles with Tribbles, which was a popular. I don't know if it was popular
or even
while it was on the air.
What is it? The a piece of the action.
Yeah.
Or like the
Federation wants its cuts. See,
Star Trek always has had a slice of comedy in everything, because if you have no humor whatsoever, I don't know, there's something less human about it.
I mean, that was like kind of the problem with the motion picture, right? Like there's no I like the motion picture, but it is fairly sterile in some of the interactions between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Like they're fairly perfunctory interactions, other than like this simple feeling or whatever, which is very, very emotional, but not in a funny way. But
there was the part that I know it wasn't like ha funny, but just when Kirk is just like, damn it, we just sit down. Don't tell Spock, because Spock is just sort of pacing and walking around, and so
I know.
But if they had let more of those sort of moments happen, it would have been interesting.
I mean, I'm actually a big fan of the motion picture, but I do think the big problem with it, other than the overlong like sequences of like ship porn.
Staring at the sky. Oh, look, that's pretty. But we're just looking at them looking at something that we don't see half the time. It's just.
But other than that, I think it was just the humor and the warmth of Star Trek was a little bit lost in that film. So
kind of reminds me of the sequel to Tron. Tron Legacy.
Tron Legacy.
It was beautiful, and but there was some of that humor that was missing from the first one. There's a little bit of like a heart that wasn't quite there.
To be fair, Daft Punk makes up for a lot of that. But
well, yes, that was amazing. If Daft Punk wasn't in it, then I don't know what it would be. But I think it's one of the best 3D movies that I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
Just because it doesn't feel like it's using it as a gimmick. It really feels like it's using the space. And the person who directed it was also like, he's an architect, and so I think if you look at it visually from an architectural standpoint, that movie's amazing.
Well, anyways, we've kind of gotten off track, but let's talk about I Excretus.
That's our brand.
I mean, hey, it's fine. It's fine. You're going off to strange new conversations, people. That's what you're here for. But really, let us talk about I Excretus. Well, I'll toss it over to you. Just as we'll go into the storyline specifically, or I guess it's just kind of one storyline with a bunch of little offshoot little things. But
I don't think this is one that we don't really need to bounce back and forth, because it all is pretty chronological, and I mean, that's part of the idea of the show, is that the lower decks and the upper decks are sort of working together.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess I'll just toss to you just to give quick overview thoughts. We'll talk more at the end about everything. But what did you think of the episode so far of it?
I really liked it. I think it was just a lot of fun on the surface level, even if you're not looking at sort of like a message underneath it. Getting to go between different scenarios, in kind of this rapid fire motion, which is great. It's almost like the Star Trek's greatest hits.
Yeah.
And the fact that it makes sense that they're doing these missions that other ships would. It's stuff that's been in a mission log, and they're just using that as a training simulator. And I think you've got as we go through this, I'll have the boards.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you're all ready with with everything.
So those are fun. But yeah, so no, I really like it, and I like the idea of like them getting a message out of it that they weren't even supposed to. That it's like, oh, of course, this is about teamwork.
Yes.
And it's about a crazy Pandronian who just wants, or Pandronian who just wants her job.
Yeah, it was absolutely wonderful. I mean, I'm in complete agreement with you. What I loved most about this is like, I had a lot of criticisms in season 1 that ultimately I felt were, the criticism I think washes off a little bit, but we do live in an era of franchise Easter eggs all the dang time. Like every single movie, whether it's a Marvel film, Star Wars film, Star Trek, none of it's immune to it. But it's just like, here's a billion Easter eggs, which is fine. Like I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. It can become a bit tiring, and some people like it, some people don't. I'm sort of in the middle. It's like sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. But this episode, what I bring that up is in the fact that this episode made those Easter eggs like actively part of the story in a really cool way that were like, it was kind of fun and clever and fresh and really, and still got to have like extended, what were amounted to extended Easter egg sequences, but were still a lot of fun and just good little sketches that did ultimately tell like a really good story. I think in the end that was ultimately about teamwork. It just took the long way round.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it was great.
Yeah. So yeah, that's that. Okay. Yeah, I guess we'll just go. We'll dive into the episode proper. So the opening of the episode is kind of what we had already seen from the trailer, which is upsetting because it's a great opening sequence. But the trailers for season 2 are already spoiled, at least for me. But it's the bit where the lower decker gang are out on a sort of satellite doing repairs or something like that.
We have seen a couple times used as a real model in TNG.
So they're out there in space being like, hey, we're all doing this together. It's great. Mariner's like, we're going to have a lot of fun. It's awesome. And then apparently,
it doesn't matter if you're upper deck or lower deck.
We're all on this together.
We're all one crew.
Exactly. And then up on the bridge, Captain Freeman gets a time distress call where they're getting it multiple times. So they're definitely stuck in a time loop. That was very good.
That was great.
Calling out to cause and effect, I guess, would probably be the biggest reference. Though there's been a few time loops in Star Trek. And so they just warp away, leaving the lower deckers on the satellite. Like,
they left us.
Yep, they left us.
They left us.
And then they beam them. A few hours later, they beam them back, and they're
6 hours later.
They beam them back, and they're almost dead. And it's like, are we smiling? Yeah. Are we gonna be fine?
Tendy's like, they're gonna come back, and we're gonna laugh about this. And then it's 6 hours later, and she's
we're
like,
laughing.
Yeah, as they're shaking and shivering.
Yep, I loved it. It was hysterical. But what I liked is when we came back from the opening credits sequence is, unlike most cold opens on Lower Decks, I mean, not all of them, but most cold opens have been fairly separate, like, have highlighted a theme of the episode, but have been separate in terms of, like, actual content. But we pick up kind of right where we left off with Mariner rightfully pissed off that they got left behind, which was nice to see some consequences. What was it? This is where Captain Freeman says, like, oh, we have a Pandronian, or we have someone coming who's going to be sort of testing the crew, so we don't really have time for this, and Mariner says, like, and so Captain Freeman walks away. He's like, what was it? It's like, tell her that there's a piece of shit. Like, it cuts her off on the word shit, which is funny.
It's the sh of the door, which is great. Yep. So it's like the word and the door were kind of like
in simpatico.
Yeah.
I forget the exact line, but she basically calls her mother a piece of, and it cuts right off on the door, which is great. So that whole sequence.
Well, they said that they didn't properly check out their magnet boots or something.
Yeah.
So I guess the computer told them that everybody was back.
I don't
or something.
like.
And that's the only thing I could think of. But I was like, that didn't really make a lot of sense.
That's like. That is like, this is not a Lower Decks problem, but this is a consistent Star Trek problem where it's like they've shown in like multiple episodes that the ship can keep track of where people are at all times, and like they never are like made aware. It's like, oh wait, computer, tell us where Commander Riker is. Like, Commander Riker is no longer on board the ship. It's like, well, why did no one
why did you
fucking tell me?
Well, that kind of thing where it's like, if there's no scheduled exit from the
Yeah.
ship and suddenly the ship doesn't sense your comm badge, there should be like even if it's not an alert, just like somewhere saying, hey, this person's gone.
Yeah, like,
you might go like, okay, I know that, and then you just clear it. or
Like
whatever.
on TNG, like if it was someone like missing from the Enterprise, like Riker as the sort of XO, he should like get a
Right.
so he saying, hey, this person's gone, so he can go and check the duty schedule. And if Riker goes missing, Picard should be notified.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know why they just don't have that alert set up. Like, I was watching, don't ask me why I was watching this episode, it's terrible, but like Move Along Home from Deep Space Nine, where like
it's not the worst Deep Space
it's
Nine.
not, but it's pretty bad. But there's a whole bit where like they just like the Starfleet security officer is sort of like co-running things with Odo at that point. It's just like, oh,
Right.
no one showed up on the for duty in the morning, and I just assumed they were all like knocked out from the party. And Odo just like immediately checks like, computer, tell us where the command crew is. Like, they are no longer on board the ship. And it's like, why would you not check that immediately as the security officer?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my god, it's frustrating. Anywho, but yeah, so we've gone off on this enough, but it's definitely like, oh my god.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So from there, we get the crew going to the basically the, what am I blanking on the words? The
Cargo bay?
the cargo bay to do the to meet the drills. That's the word I was looking for.
Yes.
Drills with the Pandronian. And there we get a little quick Pandronian explanation. It was like, oh, did you know they could split their body into 3 different parts? And one ends and says like, I thought I was a triple threat.
It was a triple threat. Yeah, and then you just hear Mariner. Ugh.
Yeah, and he was the guy who was did like the like
That's Bingston Jr.
yeah, the one man
It's
show
yeah.
last season, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Which is great. And just I love that recurring gag. So we go and meet, and obviously the Pandronian loves to make some puns, like, it's time to get ahead.
Yeah, well, and she talks just like Bem did. It's like, with this one is, so he talks like it's a third person sort of thing. Like, this one used to be at the bottom, but now this one's at the top. You know, and then she's like floating around it. Yeah.
Which I mean, would make her automatically endeared me to her. I should say the more puns, the better. Though that gets subverted later on.
Shari Yen Yen.
Yes. So we learn that she is going to have the crew go through drills to test the crew through little holodeck chamber programs. However, the big twist of it is going to be that the lower deckers are going to be the cast in the upper decker roles for the drills and vice versa.
Yes.
Which then everyone's just like, oh yeah, I can handle it. And like Captain Boimler's like, good day to you, Captain Freeman. And Aaron's like, good day to you, Captain Boimler. Yeah. It was absolutely like sweet and nice, and the lower and
I'm the chief engineer. Yes. Rutherford.
Yep. And the upper deckers are like, all right, we'll show them how easy it is to be lower deckers. And
I love that the guy who's in the middle, who never like, I'm assuming that his job didn't change at all. I was like, all right, moving along, lower deckers.
Yep, exactly. The referencing way back season one, episode one. The very first scene, I believe, or close to the first episode. So that's a nice little callback there, and I like that. That's an Easter egg to Lower Decks of itself, which is kind of nice.
Yes,
That's like
it's a nice reference.
Yeah,
back.
so it's nice that Lower Decks is referencing in and of itself. I like that sort of stuff. So the crew gets ready to go into their little drill pods, and we get a big like list on the board of all the different possible scenarios, which you have written.
Yeah, and the idea is that everybody can see what everybody else's score is, just so it's sort of like it's transparency, which I feel like I would hate. That.
Oh yeah, no,
like I don't want other people to know my score.
That'd be awful.
Yeah, we have the Kobayashi Maru, Time Trap, which is an episode of TAS, Tribble Troubles, From Q to Q,
which I want to know what that one is. Like I really want to know what that one is.
Borg Encounter, Cause and Effect, which we had actually referenced earlier, Natural Selection. Evolution, Survival of the Fittest, Chain of Command, Hero Worship, Carbon-Based Units, speaking of motion picture, and Naked Time.
Naked Time.
And we also get Jennifer's last name.
Oh, do we? I didn't catch that.
Yes, it's Shran, SH'R'EYAN.
Oh, so not related to
Sharian.
Yeah, not related to Shran.
Yeah, but it's like almost, I just love, though, that it has kind of that flow to it.
Jennifer Shariam.
Yeah,
I like it. It's
Sharian.
nice. Oh, that's good. I didn't catch that Easter egg. That's nice. All right, so the crew goes into the different pods, and I guess we'll just sort of like jump around to all of them. We'll do we'll do Mariner last, considering she's sort of the one that has the main thrust of the story. But we get Tendy's one, which is basically making fun of the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode Ethics, where Worf back in that episode, Worf got like a crate dropped on him because Starfleet doesn't believe in bungee cords, apparently.
Yes.
And basically wants to be ritually murdered, and it's a whole interesting episode about like ethics.
I broke my back picking up a peanut.
Yep. And so Tendi has to deal with something similar, but the Klingon wants to die from being picking up a peanut, and Tendy's losing points because she's not willing to ritually sacrifice this guy.
Well, at first she's like, okay, and he's like, you have to honor my cultural ethics or whatever. And she's like, okay, let's send you off to Stovacor. And she's got like a hypo spray, yeah. And he's like, no, you have to use my knife. That's what she's like, no. Ew, no, I think is what she said.
My favorite bit is though when like they're like trying to kill him, and the medics come in. It's like, no, we're losing him. Oh, time of life. 5 minutes like, and he's like, no, that was just
in the middle of like, give me 300 cc's of any kind of poison.
Yep, exactly. That was wonderful. And also I kind of like this as like a subtle commentary on like, and all of these to a degree, but this one most especially is like a subtle commentary on that sort of like Star Trekian trope that there is a right answer when it comes to ethics.
Yeah.
Like sometimes there are things where Star Trek has every right to be like, this is the right way and that's wrong, like with Data's rights and stuff in A Measure of a Man and things like that. But then there are some Star Trek episodes where it's like, this is much more morally nuanced than right or wrong,
or gray.
And the show is very much being like, no, it needs to be this way because that's the Star. And when and so
so Starfleet way equals the white Protestant Catholic view of how things
exactly. work. So I saw this as like a subtle, not only just making fun of ethics, but like that whole like the episode ethics, but just Starfleet's handling of morally gray questions in general, which I thought was kind of funny.
It was good.
Then we also get Rutherford, who gets a nice little Wrath of Khan reference, where he gets sent back to the Constitution class ship in the TOS movie era.
Is this the first time that we've seen the Monster Maroons animated?
I think so. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, but that makes sense to me. I think so.
Because I looked at it and I'm like, I don't think we've seen that before. But yeah, it was really cool to see him sort of like all those, put into animated form.
Yeah, I will say, that is my, of all the engineering sets in all the galaxy, that is my favorite. That is my favorite engineering set in all of Star Trek. I also love those like the weird, the like circle the design and the glass stuff that Spock dies in Wrath of Khan. Sorry, spoilers.
It all feels more like it feels. That's what I'm looking for. It feels like it's an actual thing.
Yeah,
it feels like this. It's not just a set, and it's not. Everything looks like it has a purpose, but it's not known, so it feels futuristic in that sense too.
I think my second favorite engineering one would be the Kelvinverse actually engineering set, because I like that looks like the. I know you don't, but I kind of like that it looks like the bowels, like an actual bowels.
I'm
of
losing
ship.
you. Oh, goodbye.
I like that design because it felt to me like an actual bowels of what a ship would be, like a submarine or something like that. I know it's
brewery that I've literally walked through.
I know it's a controversial choice, but for me, I personally like it.
No, that's cool.
So
yeah, no, and I get that. I think it is cool for a ship, just not that ship for me.
Fair. But yeah, no. So that was cool to see that Rutherford do that, and he just couldn't open the door because it was too hot for him, which is a good little bit.
So he takes his boots off and he's going to use them as gloves. Yeah. And he's like, the guy's like, it shouldn't be this hard. It's like, shut up, Ensign.
Yep, that was really wonderful. And then of course the ship blows up,
which is very cool. Like. Far away shot. It's very cinematic the way they did it.
Then Boimler, we'll just jump to him real quick because the Mariner kind of brings us back to the main story. Boimler is in a Borg encounter where he actually does pretty well initially. Like he's like, oh, I can handle this Borg encounter. He like modulates his phaser. He gets out of there. I'll finally see some Borg babies and just gets out of there. But gets finished and it's only 79% is his score. It's passing, but it's not great. And so he was like, I'm gonna do it again. And he keeps going back each time, like doing slightly better. Like I love it when he like saves the Borg babies, and then he has like a Borg tied up behind him that he's dragging along.
Yeah. And it goes from 83% to 84%.
Yeah.
Like 1% difference.
And
it's like hit me.
Yeah, and we start to see that he's getting to be a bit of a perfectionist, which I like. I really like this evolution for him because it's still. we'll get into more of what happens later, but it's showing that he has become actually competent. Like, he's the literal only one of this crew that is actually doing a good score. And it's highlighting his growing sense of competence and ability as a commander that we're seeing throughout the season. So I like that, but it's also showing a flaw in that something that we kind of see from his characters. He's a perfectionist and he can't sort of get over that, which ultimately ends up helping save the day, but I do think is like an interesting flaw to dive into him. So I love this because it managed to move his character forward and yet also highlight something that is something he needs to work on.
I think if these were like real drills and this was a real workplace or something, somebody would take it's like, hey, you did this was great, but the fact that you went back and did it 5 times or however many, that shows that this is something else that you need to work on.
Exactly. Like, that would be the actual criticism. Like, oh, this is what you need to work. Like, you're competent. You just need to know that not everything's going to be perfect. And
there's a really good line from the captain later, which I want to highlight when we get to it.
Yeah, exactly.
This kind of relates to this.
But I did really love this because it was funny and it pushed Boimler's character forward. And speaking of pushing characters forward, because I like this as well, is Mariner's kind of full of herself. And things like, oh, I can do this.
Surprise.
It'll be fine. And so she gets a mirror universe encounter, which is great. I love that when she like gets off the ship, she sees like the bird counselor guy who just like squawks at her.
Miglimo.
Yeah, Miglimo. And then she runs into Shax, who just like, who dares? And then she just punches him. He's like, oh, okay, fine. I was just asking. And then also she tries to deviate from the course, but it causes her to lose points, which is an interesting sort of, like, she's not allowed any creativity, which is interesting. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, you're not exactly rewarding creativity here.
Mm-hmm. But then she also runs into Boimler, who figures out, like, she's using the wrong hand. Our Mariner is left-handed, and he, like, screeches at her, like, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes!
Which is a cool...
It was so weird.
Yeah, it was so weird, but it was a fun little reference. I liked it.
Yeah.
And so she fails the encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Then she gets a Wild West Town encounter where she, again, loses points because she tries to go off, but then she...
Spectre of the gun, visually, like, it's got the red sky background and, like, the two-dimensional buildings.
Yeah, well, also, and Starfleet, I mean, that's the specific one, but also,
right.
like, Starfleet has always had, or Star Trek has always had, like, Westerns, like, there's been Next Generation ones, like, A Fistful
Enterprise
of Datas, Carbon, not Carbon Creek, there was a Season 3 episode of Enterprise that was a Wild West Town one.
Right. And one of those characters is actually in one of the books.
Oh.
Or The Descendant is. It's like, I think written by Dayton Ward. I'm not sure.
I didn't know that.
So he's got like a southern drawl when he talks. It's really funny. It's like, so this person had gone to Starfleet and learned to, like, basically got away from the 1800s technology and stuff. So.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. But yeah, that's cool. So yeah, Wild West is like part of like, as Mariner says, a Starfleet classic. And so, but then ultimately she fails because the horses hate her. Horses love me.
She's trampled, which obviously there is a safety protocols are on because that would have killed you.
And then she gets a third one, which is naked time. Oh boy. Which is fair. Now I know why it's called the naked time, which is the it's from the episodes The Naked Time and The Naked Now, is the disease that sort of strips people of inhibitions. And it definitely stripped people's inhibitions because she goes into the bar and everyone's just everywhere. Like not like literally everywhere. Boimler spreads his legs.
I wrote down the pairings. I'm like, I don't need to read that.
Yeah, it is fine. I think the only pairing that was there's like Ransom and one of the random guys always like sucking up to Ransom.
Stevens.
Yeah, he's just like, I don't know where you end and I begin, or whatever.
And if you notice, instead of he's riding him like a horse, but instead of whipping him, he's whipping him with a horgon.
Oh God, I didn't catch that. That's great.
I didn't either until I accidentally froze it on that. So I'm like, oh, that's what he got in his
accidentally,
hand.
Sure.
Yeah. I paused it when I went to answer your message.
Fair. But then we also get Shax and Dr. Tiana having sex too, and just like, it's naked time, and
Jennifer and Ensign Barnes were making.
I know,
too.
It was nice little presumably bisexual representation there, but whatever. I enjoyed that. That was nice. Cool for that.
Yeah.
And then Mariner's just like, kill me now, and she just like ejects herself into space.
Yeah, why is this still running after they had actually been gone into out of the airlock and everything?
Yeah, that was great.
Put me back in the old West Town.
And so we flash over to the upper deckers because Mariner's just frustrated that she's constantly failing. Flash over to the upper deckers. They're apparently having it wonderful. Like there's like, oh, I just had to stand in a transporter room and wait for someone to maybe be transported all day.
That's a nice O'Brien reference.
Yep. And so there's that, which is all very sweet. And then they also reference the fact, and also, well, sorry, my favorite thing was Dr. T'Ana curled up at the foot of Shax's bed like a cat, but also like referencing their relationship, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then they get put into an encounter where they a Klingon encounter where they have to, apparently there's a Klingons attacking the ship, but all they have to do is stack boxes, again referencing the episode Ethics. And it's like they're all pentagonal boxes, and it's just like, if they wanted us to stack them, why are they shaped like this?
Yeah. There is a way to actually put those together.
Oh yeah,
though.
but it's like weirdly difficult and annoying.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like before this episode aired, there was that we saw that scene where like the boxes were falling, and the video that they had ended where it was like almost going to land on Shax, and so I froze it and like, it's every security chief's mortal enemy, a barrel.
Yeah.
Just like...
It's true though. Again, bungee. Why no bungee cord, Starfleet? Just give us a damn bungee cord. But yeah, so this is a fun little bit, and then there's like a little reference to like, have you seen a Q floating by here? And they have eventually fail because they
the Jem'Hadar.
Yeah, it's like, oh, the Jem'Hadar. And they fail because they can't not get their heads wrapped up in something big going on. But then after this, we get the crew gets to have a sort of test on the actual bridge of the Cerritos, where the crews come together, and so Mariner gets to be captain, and Captain Freeman gets to be
Yeoman Ranson.
Exactly.
So I love that.
Yep.
Go get us some fresh coffee.
Yep. And so their mission is to get to steal the Cerritos out of the dry dock or space dock and go and bring Spock, rescue Spock at the Genesis planet. So rescuing Star Trek 3: The Wrath, or Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. Excuse me. But obviously Freeman and Mariner end up fighting and just insulting each other. And Mariner eventually tries to send Freeman to the brig and causes the ship to crash before they even leave the dry dock.
It was like the lowest score ever. In fact, it didn't even get a score. It was just
incomplete. Yep. Which is great. But then it brings us to the next scene where the crew is in the bar and Mariner and Freeman are commiserating over the fact that they kept failing. And then they look around and they see all the crew is sort of like smiling and coming together. And they start to like realize like, oh, all of this must have been a test. This must have been just like a thing to sort of say it's not the upper deckers versus the lower deckers. It's all about bringing us together. And that's
a completely reasonable assumption, especially based on all the other Star Trek that we've ever seen.
Exactly. Well, I mean, Star Trek has a history of like weirdly mind missions. Like the Kobayashi Maru is a mind. The short trek with Captain Pike is a bit of a mind. The Wesley one in TNG, where like he has to watch his friends supposedly die, is kind of a mind for his Starfleet entrance exam. They're not even Starfleet in that one. That's kind of messed up.
That's true.
There's even another the Troy Riker one is also kind of messed up because Troy has to go and send Geordi to die, the command test.
Oh right, yeah.
So like really basically every single form of test that Starfleet does is at the very least a mind, and at worst like ethically dubious. Very traumatizing, almost all of them. Anyways, so we get that, and so Freeman's like, oh, we're gonna go, thank that damn Pandronian and say thank you for this, and they go and meet her, and they say, oh yeah, this is
hey Shari Bing Bang. I like she kept calling her some different name every time.
Exactly. Yep. And it turns out, though, that actually the Pandronian, her whole goal was not to bring the crew together, but intentionally trying to fail them to prove that her drills are actually worth the time, because all the other Starfleet crews are so competent that everyone just beats them. So she's been intentionally screwing them up in order to get them to fail.
I love her laugh too. She's like, ah! And then it comes where it would be a commercial, and then it comes back, and Mariner's like, why are you laughing? What's with the laughing?
Yep, that's great. Yep, I love that. It'll call out like the dun dun dun, dun 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 dun. Yeah, that whole bit. I always make fun of the Star Trek like cut to commercial where it's like slow pan in with a dramatic look and epic music as well, and then fade out, and then it just cuts right back in, and they're like just 2 seconds later.
Right.
And so anyways, turns out she's doing evil, but then Mariner realizes that Boimler is still in his test trying to be perfect, and he's got it.
And he was at that point.
Yeah, he had finally got to 100%. He had taught the Borg Queen ethics. He had rescued all the babies. He had
beat her at chess.
Yeah, beat her in chess, and rescued all the Borg babies. Had blown up the entire ship, and people. But Mariner realizes because Boimler's still in the test, they can still perform more tests in order to get going. So they tell Boimler to keep going, even though he just got into 100%. And this leads Boimler to get.
But my test.
Exactly, he gets caught by the Borg because of this, because he has to keep it going.
Yeah.
And he gets captured by the Borg Queen, who is actually voiced by Alex Krieg, who played the Borg Queen in First Contact and then just Endgame, or did you? I think it was just Endgame.
I think it was just
because there was someone else who played the Borg Queen in the other episodes of Voyager. But yeah, in those two episodes, or those two bits of Star Trek, which was really nice to have her back. She was doing great, and she did the whole thing where she blows on his neck and is
you almost passed for human. It's I am human. Ew.
Yeah, your skin.
What have you done with your skin?
Yeah. It's it looks like we'll have to assimilate you. It's oh, I don't know. I have all these things. Maybe I'll be the net negative to the Borg.
She's it's kind of our thing.
Yeah.
Great.
So while Boimler is sadly dealing with that, the Mariner and Freeman bring everyone back up to the bridge, and they sort of try to screw with the Pandronian, endangering the ship over and over and over again, and they
scientific method her,
exactly,
which is the episode from Voyager where Janeway had been being basically, there were these invisible aliens that were doing just random tests on the crew, and she had needles into her head, so she just had a massive headache all the time, and so she's just going to drive them into the sun, and it's well, hey, we're going to die, and if you don't leave, then you could die too, and it was very much like that to me.
I mean, it's a way to do it,
Yeah.
Just endangering.
And she had never been in space. She'd written all these drills, but she has never actually been out there.
And as the Pandronian said, she's you're risking your crew just to do screw with me. He's yeah, they're used to it. It's fine. I love the bit with when they're going through the crystal entity, they warp away, and the people in the bar just look, and they're just yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
Yeah. Though I in my full review on my YouTube channel about this episode, I did make a joke here. It's well, because they go and look, and there's all these different crystalline entities. Oh, this must be crystalline entity day that they go after. And I'm technically, this breaks canon, because the whole point with the crystalline entity was there was only one, and how beautiful and wonderful and unique a snowflake it was, quite literally. A unique snowflake, because that was the whole point of that one episode of TNG where they actually killed the crystalline entity, right? It's there's only one in the universe, sort of thing.
But now they found.
I know.
I'm possible.
I was literally just joking. It was one of those how dare they ruin canon.
I thought the same thing too. I'm just well, there's not only is there another one, there's a lot of them apparently.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear. It's just it's one of those you yada yada. It was there just happens to be more of them.
Yeah.
That there's been enough time.
You can hand wave it away.
It's been enough. I mean, there's clearly a time difference between that episode and this, and you can just be but who cares? Even if
and I love
it doesn't matter.
Shari flying back and forth because she's the three different pieces of her, and you just you see her head go by, and what is it? Mariner's is it's this looks pretty bad, and Freeman's it's not good. Whatever.
Yeah, all that was wonderful. And they also fall into a black hole that has time distortions or whatever, supposedly. And eventually they get
very, very motion picture streaks coming off of them.
And eventually they get her to say okay, I'll let you pass. And then they get out of the black hole. And apparently it was just a normal black hole, not a terrifying one.
She goes, we lied, but you'd know that if you'd actually been out here.
Exactly. And so they save the ship and save the crew, and don't get the Cerritos crew just sort of sent off into different places. And Mariner and Freeman sort of have a nice coming together moment, and they realize they've bonded, which is a nice they theme
bonded over ruining a bad person's career.
Exactly. I mean, what other better way to do it? Exactly. And so that was really nice. And then it brings us to an interesting question here, where Boimler, they go down to get Boimler out of the thing, and he has actually been assimilated in the holodeck, which is kind of up. If you think about it, it's apparently you can get assimilated by the Borg even if they're holographic Borg, because he's clearly traumatized by this.
And at the very, very end, we have that last scene. It's oh, clearly the Borg didn't take his appetite.
They took
everything that I was.
It's a great line, but it just sort of leaves it. I mean, theoretically, I mean, if the safeties are off, or even even questionably, but even if the safeties are on, I think that could even.
Well, she messed with the programs. She goosed them to be you can't win. So who knows what she did.
I just find it fascinating that would even be allowed, that you could because it leaves me. I mean, obviously they can just turn the hologram off, but if the holodeck malfunctions as it's wont to do, could you have Borg that were created by holographic Borg get onto the ship?
Oh, that would be really
yeah,
creepy.
it would be like a whole subset of holo Borg. It raises so many interesting questions that I'm just sort of curious about. But I mean, not in a bad way, in a more like I could totally see that being a thing, but it's weird to think about. But yeah, also some other interesting question too, like with ethics and the holodeck too, is like Mariner is clearly traumatized by the like she has a flashback of Shaq saying it's naked time, which is like questions of like
it's naked time.
Yeah, it's like questions of boundaries with the crew, because now she's seen all the crew naked, which is like, is that
that was just it. It's like, why would the holograms use the actual crews? That feels a little
reach. I mean,
invasive.
Yes, but it's also something that even Star Trek has broached before with like Barclay and his sort of like Troy fantasy hologram. Like you could probably
Crisis point.
Yeah.
Boimler was the one who read everybody's personal logs and created holograms of them.
So it's again not a Lower Decks exclusive problem. It's more just like an interesting like ethically dubious problem. But again, Starfleet and ethics don't always match as well as we would think in an interesting way.
Yes.
So I thought that was sort of an interesting like, is it bad that Mariner's clearly traumatized by that too? But I guess if you're a commander, you got to deal with possible sex orgies breaking out.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would hope that would be the worst thing that you'd have to deal with. That would be great.
Hopefully.
I liked, speaking of Boimler before, when they're walking down the hallway and, Mariner expresses concern that he's like stuck in this program. And she's like, he'll be fine. He's one of our best. And Mariner's like, he is. And I thought that was a really interesting, like, the crew is, the upper decks is starting to see him in a much more, positive light, and they know who he is, and they think he's one of their best people. Mm-hmm. So and I don't think she would just randomly say that.
Yeah. No, I think so too. I mean, we're getting hints of that with Ransom in the past few episodes, sort of liking Boimler, and again, I think it's subtly. I mean, this whole. I mean, I hinted at like Boimler's character arc through this episode, like showing he's becoming a better commander, but still has issues he needs to work to be fully ready to be captain, which I think is great for his character. And Mariner too. I think, unlike last episode, where I think I wish the episode had called her out just a little bit more at the end of that episode. Yeah. This one, I think, works still well for her because she's kind of full of herself and kind of doesn't realize that she, like yes, there was a bit of manipulation on the Pandronians' part, but she is still kind of, like, full of herself and not really taking the lessons. Like, she's not the shit all the time. Yeah. And I like that sort of calling her out and seeing her blind spots. And, yes, she's getting pushed forward in terms of her... What I like is that they're highlighting that they're kind of reversed, actually thinking about it, they've kind of reversed Boimler and Mariner here, where Boimler is now like the one who is competent and knows the ropes of being a better commander, whereas Mariner's the one's failing. But Mariner is the one that's learning to be better with the crew, like learning to bond with crew members before, because she sort of had this whole thing where like she doesn't like to get close with people, and she's getting close with her mother, she's getting close with Tendi, she's getting closer with Boimler. So she's learning how to be a better team member. But she's not she's not growing as a leader. Whereas Boimler in season 1 had to learn to be a better team member, but now he is learning to be a better leader. So they kind of flip-flopped him, and I think in a really good and interesting way. And I like that that continues for both of their characters here. That Boimler's clearly growing on that end, and Mariner, while deteriorating as a leader, is improving as a team member, which I think is kind of interesting.
And it's interesting when they're together. You can feel I don't know how to phrase this exactly. You can feel the separateness. That's not what I mean. But Boimler definitely feels as if he's growing apart from her, but not like in a really like, I don't want to ever talk to you again. But there's a difference in their whole
dynamic,
their career and their dynamic. Yeah, there's just something interesting that they're both growing, but they're starting to grow in different directions slightly. Yeah. But that doesn't mean they can't be friends, and they can't, but it's just, before it felt they were like very much, he was obviously, he was a stickler and by the rules, and she was the maverick, but they were kind of on the same footing.
Well, they complemented each other's flaws really well, but now that they both grown or not grown in different respects, I think that they don't complement each other's flaws, bolster up each other's flaws, and help with each other's benefit, like good sides anymore. They don't match together as anymore, which is fine. That happens with people, you know.
That's a really interesting dynamic to explore instead of it just being two-dimensional, like oh, we're best friends or they're in love. You know, there's nothing binary about this, I guess.
Yeah, no, it feels, despite all the comedy and heightened action, it feels realistic.
Yeah.
I definitely like that. So that's a great little piece. So ultimately,
good job, Lower Decks.
You're doing a good job with character arcs.
Yes.
But yeah, I think ultimately, just to sort of wrap up my thoughts on this episode, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, this is, I think, probably one of my favorite episodes of this season, if not my favorite episode this season so far, where I think they used Easter eggs to good effect. The character arcs are really, really good. There's some really great stuff for Star Trek fans, and yet it also has like a really good message in there as well, and tells like a really good, clear story with a clear point to it. So I think overall this is one of the strongest episodes of the show, and definitely one of the strongest episodes of the season. So
I agree. This is one of the few episodes, not that I don't go back and watch them for fun, but when we're doing our reviews and stuff, you watch them for certain specific reasons, and then but this I've put on like 3 or 4 times since I watched it the first time, just for fun.
Yeah, no, me too.
And it's just like, okay, I love this, and I can't wait for other people to see it so I can actually
talk about it. Yeah,
talk about it. So that's why this is fun.
This is definitely an episode that's like I will be watching this just for the fun for years to come. Like this is the one that I'll like turn on to be like, yeah, this is a great Lower Decks.
The funny thing is, like in Voyager, the scientific method is one of the ones that I will just pop on for fun. You know, maybe it's cathartic or something watching Janeway trying to
I'm gonna murder y'all. Classic,
exactly.
Classic Janeway.
Yeah,
suicide
this
run.
has some of those elements too. It's just sort of like, like she said, ruining a jerk's career.
Yep.
So, but there's something. Yeah, I think this is one of those great. You can just pop it in and watch it at any time episodes.
Yep, I 100% agree. This is a really strong episode for me. So yeah, I think that's where we'll basically leave it here, unless you have any more final thoughts.
Yeah.
I really love the episode.
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, I guess we should hawk our wares. Where can people find?
What was your score? 100%? Did you get 39%?
Yeah. Well, you could just
the podcast
look,
simulation.
They're all recorded and publicly available.
Right. Oh, actually, before I do have real quick. There's a couple of more things that were on boards that we didn't look. Yeah. We had Bingston Jr. was doing Escape the Void. Rutherford had The Good of the Many, which is what he was doing, I think, with the ship. Manhaver was Tribble Troubles. Volus, I don't know who that is. Time Loop. Mariner had Naked Time. And there is a couple other ones.
That's one that I would like to do. I would love to do a time loop simulator. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. Barnes was doing Whale Rescue. So that's obviously Star Trek 4. Tendi, Medical Ethics. This is Arjun, Tribble Infestation. Dahi, Dahae, I think that's how you pronounce that. Extreme Engineering. And MERP, which is, we finally have a name for that guy who has kind of like the gills.
Oh, yeah.
His name is MERP, or her name.
Their name. Could be their name.
Their name.
Come on.
Thank you.
Putting on their gender.
But they were also making out with like 3 different people in the Naked Time, so it's just like, who knows? Teleportation Death Tag.
Oh my God.
I want to know what Teleportation Death Tag is.
That sounds fun. Or awful. But either way, it's interesting.
Hey, if it's not real, it'd be fun.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I'll leave it at that. But I thought that was great. Like we now have a name, which is funny because we have Murph in Star Trek Prodigy. The
the
gelatinous
the
creature.
blob,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and now we have Merp in the show.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
So it's time for us to hawk our wares. So I guess I will go first. You can find me at Jessie Gender over on the YouTubes. There I do video essays every other week about LGBTQ and social issues through nerddoms and geekdoms, or sometimes I just rant about whatever's on my brain and try and do funny, weird stuff as well. I also have a secondary channel called Jessie Gender After Dark, where I do reviews and reactions and news stuff there.
Naked Time.
Exactly. You can find all that there. I also have social medias on the Twitters, where you can follow me there. I also have another podcast that I do called What the Frel, which is a Farscape rewatch podcast that I do with the wonderful Council of Geeks, who is another wonderful LGBTQ YouTuber. And so we go through every episode of Farscape. And I also have a Patreon that you can help support me do all this way too many things that I do and give yourself cool perks like your name and videos. And we're actually going to be doing... I I don't know when this video will go live. In accordance with it, we'll be doing a watch along with The Matrix with my patrons this week, which should be a lot of fun. And so that happens every single month. So if you missed The Matrix one, we'll be doing more going forward.
Nice.
So that is all the stuff that I'm doing. And
I'm a patron, so I might jump into that.
You better.
You can find me at Geek Filter on Instagram and Twitter. I'm mostly on Twitter these days, and I share my kind of like fan art and stuff that I've been doing.
Very good. By the way, I didn't respond because I was busy, but your Star Trek Enterprise fan art was really, really beautiful for the anniversary the other day.
It was one of those. I had the ship. I did not draw that ship in like 1 hour.
It looked great. It looked great nonetheless. Yeah.
So I kind of took it and remixed it and did a whole different thing with it. But yeah, no, I love doing that. And if you want, I never talk about. I mean, we talk about it, but I don't ever pitch it. I'm the co-author of Star Trek: The Official Guide to the Animated Series. So if you want to go to your local bookstore, hopefully if they have it, I would prefer that you would.
I actually did see it in my Barnes & Noble the other day.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I was there. They had a copy, yeah.
Nice. So yeah, but you can find it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, those sort of things too. But if you can give money to a smaller bookstore, they need it, I'm sure, during like this time. But yeah.
And it's a good book too.
Thank you. So yeah, and the little bits and pieces about BEM, you'll find more information in there about that. So pick that up. And the other thing we have is we're sponsored by Fansets, which is the nerd pin company. And coming out on October 1st, there's a whole new set of pins for Star Trek. We have, and where did my list go? There we go. There's the Xindi Commander.
Oh, really?
Dolim. Or Dolim. Trying to remember who that is.
I might get that right now. Is it already up?
Well, it'll be October 1st, so in a couple days for when this comes out, or for when we're talking.
Sorry, you said Xindi, and I'm like,
yes, that's right. Dr. Gillian Taylor from Star Trek 4. We have Admiral Kirk in his Monster Maroon uniform. We have the Women of Trek, B'Elanna Torres. I like that one. She was a great engineer. And that's the list. And then there she is. Yes, there's one more thing at the end. It's just like the person who signed the thing. I'm like, oh, that's a name. That's not a pin. So yeah, actually I think I'm gonna pick up B'Elanna Torres, honestly.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Cool. But yeah, so they
awesome.
are, and I didn't just mention that just to mention it. We also have a discount code. You can get 10% off if you use the word drawn, all one word, caps, in the coupon code when you check out.
Do it now.
That's what Jessie's doing right now. She is.
I'm legitimately on the page. I'm actually buying that, and I'm buying a Lower Decks Delta because I actually need one for I have my Lower Decks uniform, but the Delta actually fell off. Because I was at a con this weekend, so I actually need to buy a new one. So I'm actually buying the Delta on there.
I think that happened last time you were ordering the. Oh no, I think it was Brandy. She's like, excuse me, I'm gonna go order this pin from Voyager. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I need it because it just fell off, and I'm also getting an Archer pin now because I'm saying, oh god, there's too many pins. Too many pins.
Yeah, we better log off before Jessie buys everything.
Yes, but that's it. That's it, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And next week we'll be reviewing the next.
We have 2 more
Decks,
episodes.
I know it's disappointing, but I will say, without spoiling anything, next week for me is a personal favorite, so I'm very excited about it.
Yes, we will have that conversation next week.
We'll have that conversation next week, but I'm excited to talk about it. But anyways,
me too.
Love you all, and I hope you all live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
Don't you give me that sarcastic Vulcan salute!